Hello there! Welcome back to SMP Theory. So, a lot happened in the recent Tales from the SMP episode, and there is much to discuss. So today I have a giant recap along with a ton of theories to throw at you. But before all that, it would be super awesome if you could like the video and subscribe if you enjoy it. These videos take a lot of effort, and I would just super appreciate it, because there's lots of cool stuff to come in the future. Also, my Discord server is super cool, and we theorize a ton, so I suggest you join, link in the description. Also, thank you for 500 subscribers. That's an insane amount of people, and I am so grateful for all of you guys, and I hope that you enjoy the videos. So I'm very excited to put out more stuff in the future, and just thank you. Also, make sure you stay till the end, because I'm gonna cover the in-between segment, and wow, there's a lot to talk about. Alright, let's get into it. This Tales from the SMP episode is called The Pit, and it starts with Karl meeting a king named King Porcius VII. He is the king of the Sabin Empire, and he is holding an ultimate battle to pick his new general. Now, some things to mention here. Karl has said that this takes place about 1 year before the events of the lost city of Mizu. I bring this up because you may notice that the characters from that episode are all standing outside the Colosseum. My guess is that this is mainly just a small Easter egg, but I do think there are some interesting connections to the lost city of Mizu for me to bring up later, so maybe this was kind of meant to hint to try and connect the two episodes more deeply. Anyways, the king tells Karl that he thinks he would make the perfect new cameraman for this event, and then we meet our first fighters who battle it out in a Colosseum with special surprises that are controlled by the king. The first battle is between Jamie and Lagius, where Jamie comes out on top. Then it's Bartholomew who took home the win against Watson. Next, Genevieve beats out Levi, and Edward and John fight. By the way, John later renames himself to become Grievous, so John and Grievous are the same person. Anyways, the two of them fight, and John/Grievous ends up being victorious. Then we meet a character who ended up getting a bye in the first round due to the odd number of people, and got automatically moved on to the second round. Someone who happens to be named Ran, but we'll get to him in a second. Anyways, second round approaches, and Ran, Grievous, and Bartholomew have a 3-person battle as the second stage to victory, and Grievous succeeds, meaning that he'll be pitted against the winner of the fight between Genevieve and Jamie, where Jamie ends up winning. The final battle approaches, and Jamie defeats Grievous in an intense final moment. Well, maybe it's not that intense.
I didn't even have to use these 3 totems of undying I had!
But either way, this means that Jamie is the next general of the Sabin Empire. However, he still has one final task to complete. In each of the battles, the people were never actually dead, just knocked out. So, Jamie must kill all the other competitors to claim his power as general. He does so, and then the king decides to watch the footage Karl got of the event. However, Karl forgot to take the lens cap off, so the king orders Jamie to kill him. And as Jamie does so, we see that Karl looks over at Ran and Watson, who were meant to be dead. But then Karl is killed, and we end the main parts of the Tales episode. Now, for the most part, this episode seemed to be more chill and fun, with a lot of cool characters and battles. But the real question of this part of the Tales episode is what is going on with Ran. Now, we see Ran's skin being solely Enderman, so we can kind of make the assumption that maybe the Ran part of Ranboo is like the Enderman side, and the Boo part is like the white mystery side. Now, Ran is extra weird during this Tales episode. He apparently just showed up when no one invited him for the tournament, and continuously said he didn't actually care about becoming the general because it doesn't matter in the end and this place is going down anyways.
Where are you from?
Complicated, but don't want to get too much into my history now, do we?
Yeah, you're so right, we don't, yeah.
True.
You came here to be the general, though. You know this is for being a general?
Yeah, I could care less about being the general, honestly, but
How confident are you in your victory here?
I mean, even if I win, even if I lose, either way, I mean, this place is still going down.
Also, when he's knocked out by Grievous in his battle, he simply says, "I'll see you again."
I'll see you again.
Karl points this out as being weird, but everyone just brushes it off and moves on. So clearly something is very suspicious here, considering this Enderman, whose name is suspiciously close to Ranboo's, shows up uninvited to a gladiator event and says a bunch of creepy stuff. Now, this seems to be a kind of continuing trend when Ranboo-type characters enter these Tales episodes. For example, Ranbob from the Lost City of Mizu episode. Ranbob is the only other one besides Ran who I'm really counting as definitely relating to Ranboo, because even though he has some other characters that look really similar to him, this just seems to more be a cool reference through skin design rather than genuinely lore, whereas Ran and Ranbob are definitely meant to be similar to Ranboo in many ways. We also know that Ranbob and Ran likely cannot be the same person, changing how they look or putting on a disguise or something, because Ranbob said that he had been trapped in the lost city of Mizu for multiple years, and this takes place only 1 year before that episode, unless Ranbob is lying, of course. So a good guess as to what these characters are might be descendants to Ranboo. It seems that there's a potential for his condition to be genetic, so maybe that's why his descendants have memory issues and act the way that they do in this episode. While this is definitely a super plausible theory, I also think I have another one that might work well too, but that involves knowing about what happened in the in-between this episode, so let's get to that. In order to tackle the in-between for this episode of Tales, I think it's best to just go through chronologically and cover every single detail in every book because, wow, there's a lot to talk about. So we start with Karl finding himself back in the in-between, where we see a small kind of title screen for it, one that happens to have a wither rose on it. Now we see lots of wither roses all throughout the in-between when there's a book written by the main author, so it definitely has some significance. Wither roses, we know, are usually associated with evil or bad things and death, so keep that in mind. Anyways, we see Karl read a book written by the main author. The author seems to be happy to see Karl returning, and continues to use that strange smile we've been seeing over and over again with the bracket. The book then goes on to say, quote, "I see you have accidentally strayed from the path recently, and I must remind you, don't stray from the path," end quote. This seems to kind of confirm a small observation made in my first theory about the in-between, that it's changing in real time. Whatever the in-between is, it's watching Karl, and these books seem to appear in real time as Karl does things. They know what he's doing. As a few episodes ago, it was mentioned that the in-between was alive and evolving. This book tells Karl to go down the ladder where he previously strayed from the path, and that there's a surprise waiting for him. When he does this, he sees what appears to be blood, scattered across the floor, along with a sign reading to stick to the path with that weird smiley face again. Now, this is clearly the in-between trying to make a point, trying to show Karl that if he tries to stray from the intended path again, it's going to know. Now, the blood on the floor is really odd, since we don't know whose blood it could be. Maybe it's the blood of those other Karls we keep seeing, or maybe there's someone else going through the in-between who went in the past and got killed for trying to stray from the path. However, we can infer a bit more about the handwriting that we see. People have pointed out it looks awfully similar to that first page of Ranboo's ARG pages. Now, in case you're unaware, Ranboo started an ARG, or an alternate reality game, all about his Ender Walk, and after people solve clues, they can find different pages relating to his lore, and this was one of them. And the writing on this and the walls seemed to match up. Now, this is just speculation, but if it's true, it could maybe give a lot more information about who really runs the in-between. Now, this page has 3 different people writing on it, and it appears to be a research page, like someone was doing research into Enderwalkers and trying to understand it, but Ranboo and potentially someone else, or maybe his other side, scribbled all over the page. If this is the case, maybe the person running the in-between is Ranboo, and Ranboo is the one who's somehow connected to the in-between. But again, because we can't confirm the handwriting actually being matched up, all is just pure speculation since we don't have any real hard evidence to back that concept up, but I do think it's pretty cool. Anyway, Karl leaves the area and reads another book, telling him again not to stray from the path, and it asks him to, quote, "go to the room where this all began," end quote. Karl reaches the main corridor of the castle to another book, seeming really proud that he has learned so much in his time in the in-between. Then it brings to use sort of a catchphrase for the first time. Now, if you notice, there are a lot of things, like the quote, "this is not a place to provoke harm, but a place to feel at ease," that are used quite often in the in-between, along with that smiley face that almost seem to kind of signify this main author and become common things for them to use. In this new book, it seems we have another one. The author writes, quote, "how silly," end quote, and this tends to become another common phrase of theirs, which seems important to note. Anyways, the book continues on to tell Karl that he isn't much of himself lately, that his imagination is getting the best of him. It tells him the illusions are just his mind deteriorating over time and he should only trust the path. The illusions it's referring to, by the way, are the mystery books that he keeps reading with the question mark titles. Now, because it seems pretty safe to say that this place is manipulative, we can assume this is another one of those manipulations. It's telling Karl that these very real things going on in the in-between are just him slowly losing himself and not to trust them. But we can see that Karl isn't very on board with that explanation either. Next, he opens another mystery book to see in all caps, quote, "Please, just get to the portal. The in-between isn't what you think it is," end quote. Now, if things weren't weird enough for you, here's where things really go off the rails. Karl takes the book and tries to keep it in his inventory, only for things to begin to flash, turn dark, and glitch, and then he gets teleported back to where he was earlier. Now, a new book lies where another one was. It tells Karl that this author knows more about Karl than he does, and that the in-between is a safe place that shouldn't be dictated by these visions he's having. Karl decides to keep moving forward again, but the strange mystery book he had read the first time is no longer there, and he moves to another room, with yet another mystery book. This book seems to apparently finally answer the question of who the other Karls in the in-between really are. We're told that they're Karls who've been stuck in the in-between forever because they forgot and lost themselves. So we can see that this might confirm that, in fact, there are multiple timelines in this universe. At first, it was possible for all these Karls to just be the same Karl of different points in time, but rather, it's revealed they're Karls who made different decisions. Karls who didn't stray from the path, and Karls who continued to time travel until they ended up trapped here in the in-between. So maybe this can confirm that straying from the path was the right choice, or at least it shows that if Karl continued with the in-between, he would likely simply wind up another Karl, trapped here forever. Maybe those glitches and him being teleported back in time by the main author could relate. Maybe it's trying to get him on the timeline where the in-between author wins, but it's not working. This mystery book also tells Karl that all he's seeing is reality, and then it tells him again to go to the portal. But, of course, he stumbles upon another book from the main author, telling him not to go to the portal, saying that he'll regret it if he does. Then it reads, quote, "This is not even a warning. We will come and make sure you don't stray from the path," end quote. So this seems to potentially reveal a lot. It says we. Now, this could mean a lot of different things. Maybe it's referring to the author and the in-between itself, since we know it's alive. Maybe there are genuinely multiple people or beings behind the in-between trying to stop Karl from doing this. Now, going off the possibility that maybe it's Dream, this could potentially refer to Dream and Ranboo when he's under Dream's control. Again, not too sure, but it's totally a possibility. And another interesting theory is that maybe the main author is just Karl himself. Earlier in a book, the author says that he knows Karl better than he does, which seems like it could be totally plausible that it's Karl himself writing these books somehow, and all these different Karls are doing it or something, which I think is an interesting thought to address before we get into some of the more spicy kind of stuff about the in-between. Suddenly, Karl starts receiving strange messages on the screen, seemingly from the mystery author. They tell him to follow a path of torches, that it can't follow him through the portal. Again, using the term "it" is interesting to note here, referring to the in-between. Anyways, it then says that he'll be home soon, to keep going, to hurry, and to do this for his friends, and to protect the stories. But as all of this is happening, things are glitching, and if you slow down the video enough, you can see a few hidden messages throughout this part of the clip. Before every message flashes on screen, strange things are spelled out in these weird symbols. Now, these symbols aren't foreign. They're actually from the language used by Minecraft enchanting tables, and yes, they can be decoded. Now, something to mention here is that this is a different language than what Ranboo uses, although it's really similar. But apparently the egg might be associated with this language, so maybe it's got something to do with that. But before we get to decoding, I want to mention something kind of weird that I noticed. Lots of things Karl experiences here in the in-between seem to almost fit perfectly into having an answer, and they seem like they should have an easy explanation, but everything is always just slightly altered so the connection can't really be confirmed. For example, if we saw a typical smiley face in those books, we could immediately know the author is Dream, but the smile is just a touch off from what we would expect it to be. Same with this weird language. If it was Enderman, we could likely confirm it's Ranboo and boom, theory done. Except it's not Enderman. It's just slightly different. Anyways, not really sure what this might mean, but It's really weird that these connections exist like this, and I think it's something to maybe take account of, that they're just so close to potentially having an answer. Anyways, I spent some time decoding the enchanting table, and to be honest, most of it left me with pure gibberish. I looked around online and found people who got the same messages as me, but they couldn't seem to understand them either. So I'm going to include the decoded messages here, and if you want to try and see if maybe there's more to them, that would be great. I have already plugged them into things like the Caesar and Visionaire ciphers and trying to decode them, and I didn't see too much, so I'm not really sure how to go from there. Anyways, there was one code that actually easily decoded to English from the symbols. It simply read, quote, "You'll be home soon," end quote. But anyways, maybe more codes like this are going to come in the future, and maybe we can start to better piece them together, or decode them into actual messages next time around. Anyways, Karl finds the portal by following the torches and one final book sitting near it, marked again with a wither rose. It reads, quote, "You may never see your friends again if you go to this portal. Don't be silly. The Inbetween is here to keep you warm, comfortable, and most importantly, it is supposed to keep you in tune with the powers you possess. Do not let these visions get to you. This will not end well. You will lose everything. Don't be silly," end quote. So, yeah, this main author seems desperate for Karl to stay in the Inbetween, but their plan doesn't work too well. Karl enters the portal, and we're introduced to an entirely new place, marked with a picture of a white tulip. He enters the other side. Now, the white flower is usually meant to symbolize the opposite of the wither rose, white signifying something good and kind versus the wither rose's evil representation. Another thing to talk about would be the name of this place, the other side. Now, the in-between sounded more like a middle ground, potentially a place in between time or even in between life and death, whereas the other side sounds like the end of a journey, maybe even death itself. Now, I don't know if this is really where people go when they die on the server, but imagining Karl seeing Schlatt, Wolver, and Mexican Dream somewhere in there just sounds like it would be really cool, but I think that's more something I would want to happen rather than what will actually go down. Anyway, this place is similar to the Inbetween, a large castle, but this one is black rather than white, not to mention some of the crimson we know to be associated with the egg is seen. So, that seems a little odd considering we also have the egg language. So maybe the egg comes from here, I don't know. Karl's skin has also changed to a dark version of his in-between skin. He enters the castle to find a new book. It welcomes him to the other side. It tells him he's home now, and that they can explore more soon. Then, it pans out, and the Tales episode ends. So yeah, we have an entirely new dimension to talk about now. First of all, is the other side a good place? I mean, the in-between seemed like a nice place at least to begin with, so it's possible the other side is bad too, or maybe the in-between isn't even bad and it's all some big plot twist or something. Honestly, I'm not too sure, but I'd love to hear your opinions about it. To me, it would make the most sense for the other side to actually be good and the in-between to be bad, but again, that could just be a trick or something. Anyways, now it's time for some crazy theories I've thought about all about this place and what it means to close out. The first thing I want to bring up might seem kind of obvious, but we now have a light side and a dark side to these time travel dimensions, just like Ranboo has the dark and the light side. I've theorized before about his potential involvement with all of this, and this seems to add some more potential evidence to that list. Not to mention how bizarre Ranboo was in this episode as Ran, and the fact that his character in this episode appeared to be his fully darker Enderman side, almost like how the dark side of the other side was shown right afterwards. He did keep saying, "I'll see you again," and lots of other creepy stuff, so definitely something to look at. Now, I kind of want to elaborate on my previous theory about Ranboo maybe being a time traveler too, from like a month ago, and you should watch that video if you haven't, by the way, it's pretty fun. But what if Ranboo went through the exact thing Karl's currently going through? What if his white side? What if it was him slowly being corrupted by the in-between? What if he almost turned into those Karls that end up stuck in the in-between, in that light clothing, and seemingly stuck forever and ever? Maybe Ranboo was in that process as a time traveler. Maybe he stuck to the path, but maybe he was able to escape before he was fully taken over by the in-between. Then, maybe he wound up on the other side before it was too late for him, and that somehow created the other half of him over time, the dark side of him that we see. Then, he somehow escaped this, or got trapped in the present, and his memory loss from being stuck in the in-between caused him not to remember. And maybe those Ranboo characters we see are pieces of Ranboo he lost when he was a time traveler, and that's why they have so many similarities to present Ranboo. Ranboo tends to forget things when he's enderwalking. Maybe that's the in-between memory loss half kind of shining through in those moments. I don't know, but a lot of the dots definitely seem to connect with this idea, so I do think it's interesting to look at. Not to mention, a couple nights ago, I saw that Karl and Ranboo were apparently talking, trying to do lore together, so maybe we're onto something. Alright, last thing to cover today is that weird new repetitive other side message, all about this being Karl's home. Not to mention, Karl tweeted from his private account that the in-between felt familiar to him, but he can't quite put his finger on it. Now, maybe this has to do with the alternate timeline thing, that in every other timeline he got stuck in the in-between forever, never made it to the other side, so this new author calls it home, the place he's meant to be in the right timeline. It could even mean Karl is from this place, or he's done this before and doesn't remember it, or a number of other things. So, I say we have to wait a little bit longer to get more details on that part, but there are definitely some fun ideas that can kind of sprout from that. Anyways, there was a lot to unpack with Tales from the SMP, The Pit, and I hope you all enjoyed it. I will see you soon with some more crazy theories, because I have a feeling lore is going to start to pick up relatively soon, so get ready for that. By the way, I wanted to give a shout out to one of my friends who also does YouTube, and he's doing really good right now, so you should go check out his videos too. He's awesome. He does like Guitar Hero stuff if any of you are into that, so go check him out. The link will be in the description to his channel. Alright, thanks for watching everybody, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!